is as it relates to the whole concept of it. I'm struggling with trying to understand if if someone's in the future, let's say 50 years out,
Hmm.
and what was that guy that came back? He was around 2000, 1900s, where he came back specific. He was a Titor, John Titor,
Yeah, John Teeter. Yeah.
right? So his whole thing was he came back to get some information, apparently, and grab some computer parts of something that they didn't have in the future that they needed to prevent something that was going to happen between then and their future,
Okay.
right? So the paradox that I'm struggling with is if you're in the future and you know that you can go back and change something so that something else doesn't happen, doesn't it mean that that hasn't that you can't do that and it hasn't happened because it didn't change, which is why they have to go back? Do you see where
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
trying
So
to?
I want to address
Of
this
course, if it
because
worked, he wouldn't have come in the first place.
Well, and that's my point. Is that
Yeah, that's right.
if
when people okay, all
apparently
right.
it didn't work because they had to go back and redo it. Is
So
that fair?
let me tackle it like this. Okay.
Okay.
I think we all in Western society, especially, grow up with a certain conception of time as being linear, as a
Mhm.
flow, like one stream as one river. Okay. And I guess we'll go really basic here. Um, First, time doesn't exist. Okay. So let's just start there. So when we talk about time and the idea of bending time and is this possible, and feeling limited, like, well, if I go back and kill my grandfather, then do I just erase myself from time? Great
So
question.
let me just interject there real quick, just because of the linguistic semiotician side of my head. The word time and the definition of it. Okay. Um, so you're describing the way that it's typically defined and used when people talk about time,
Mhm.
whereas um, the idea of non-local time or different timelines, non-local time or non-local consciousness, which in itself has a time component because you're going from one event to another, right? And there's
Maybe.
something that
I mean,
happened between them
well,
because
well, so
not everything is happening all at once unless you're in the simulation, I guess.
no, you don't have to be in a simulation for everything to be happening all at once. I don't
Hmm.
necessarily subscribe to that. I think
Okay.
that everything is, in a way, happening all at once. And then there's other dimensions that exist out of what we see as standard time and space. And
Right.
then this brings us to the Mandela effect, or the Monopoly guy having a monocle or not. That, like, a more recent one, I think, where people are picking up on that one. Um, I think that there's maybe major timeline streams, and there might be a primary timeline stream, and then you get the bad guys, if you will, using things like the Montauk Project and manipulating children to mess with timelines to try to nudge the parallel timeline away from the one that's written about in the Bible and so many other books and writings. God wins, the light wins. They want to nudge it onto one of the Mad Max apocalyptic vampire Armageddon scenarios where the Illuminati, people win. Okay. And I think, in a way, now we're getting like quantum entanglement and vibration and frequency. Well,
Mhm.
maybe the people who really, really, really want to live the Mad Max scenario, they're going to get to live that. And maybe the people who want to live the more full disclosure now Star Trek scenario will get to live that as well. I mean, I think that's part of a free choice. But first, I'll start with the law of one, right? We all come from source, and we're all going to go back to source one way or another, right? And then the law of free will. Well, we're given free will by source to come out here and explore and play and learn and evolve and whatnot. And then when it comes to time, I mean, just from the experiments that and the things that our fellow, full disclosure now folks and can testify to in terms of time and timelines. Yeah, time does not seem to be very rigid necessarily. What I have been told from some of these time soldiers, if you will, is that timelines themselves may be sentient, and they will fight to not be altered and messed with and screwed with. And there probably are a lot of mechanisms in place to just keep you from, hey, why not just travel back through a portal and kill my grandfather to see what happens? You know?
Is it
but-
possible? Is it
yeah.
possible that we belong to a timeline? We belong to this moment, which could explain things like deja vu. I've done this before. Oh shit! You know, I've relived it. And it's like I can only give an example for a moment. Back in was it 1990? Finished work. I went home. I was on night shift, and all day long, something's wrong. Something's wrong. I rang around to everybody in the family. Is everybody okay? Yep. No one. There's no problems whatsoever. That night I went to work. I got a call over the two-way radio in the vehicle. They said, "Hey, you better call home." No, mother was in hospital. Okay. They said, "Don't worry. She's sitting up in bed. She's laughing. She's joking. She's fine. Come in after work." And I went in after work. It was 6 o'clock actually, and she was there, happy, cheerful, you know, sitting up in bed in hospital. You know, my eldest brother came in. Yeah, I've seen all my boys now, and she's talking. And she was very jovial, and she said, "I'm feeling a bit tired," and so I popped up her pillows and sat her back in it, and she laid back. I had my right arm around her back of her neck, you know, hugging her type thing, and the left hand in my left hand. Within 15 seconds, she passed away. You'll swear she only just closed her eyes to sleep. And I just said to my brother, "Can you please get the nurse?" And he says, "Why?" I said, "Can you please get the nurse?" "Why?" She just closed her eyes. "Get the nurse." And of course, really, I didn't want to say it because I wasn't sure. I felt it. And nurse came in. She got out, said, "She said, sorry, your mother passed." And it's like I knew 24 hours before, you know, and it's like the same thing with my father as well. I knew I had to come back. I was working in a mining town, and I said, "I've got to get back to Perth, you know. My dad, he's in a nursing home. I need to be by his side." I was only back a few days before he passed away, and I was with him the day he passed away. And my wife just looked at me and says, "How did you know?" I said, I just knew. I just knew. You can't. So I think, you know, like, people, when they talk about things like ESP or they predict things to going to happen, they visualize it. Maybe they're memories of what I would say, our recycling life, where we go through life and repeating it until we get it right. It's a learning process. You can't ascend us or whatever. I don't know. We're trapped in a timeline. Just a thought. I'm just putting it out there that it could possibly be. As they say, time and space is totally irrelevant. It all exists within the now.
Well, I'm not, that's one of my trigger words. I'm not going to go there. I want to go back to Brian real quick on this, this whole, I can mentally imagine the scenario of somebody being in the future, deciding, you know, that they need to go back and change the past in some way, which is going to, at least in whatever that represents, it's going to alter that existence going forward. That apparently has already happened. So it's something that needs to be erased. And it will be erased because even further in the future, you come back and you drop in and you do whatever you need to do, you affect the future. And then that piece of future, whatever that is essentially erased. But the ripples of the impact through those frequency signatures that are going to be in the future most definitely will have some effect, unknown. And this gets to the point you mentioned, entanglement. So in quantum mechanics and theory and physics, everybody's pretty much come down to the point that everything is Schrodinger and Whitehead. Einstein missed it. Tesla got it. Russell knew it. Keeley knew it. And I think even Faraday and Heaviside and those guys knew it as well.
Bohr and Heisenberg.
Yes. And the whole concept is that nothing is solid. Everything is in motion. Everything is a wave. It's in motion because of the frequency that makes what it is manifest. So if everything's in motion, and it's not like a sinew that everybody's used to seeing on an oscilloscope. It's a toroidal. It's a circular motion. Okay, that is twisting within itself, and that has its own cycles. So the whole concept is that everything is wave. Well, a wave, you cannot take a picture of a wave, of a piece of a wave, because the wave is always in motion. And this is the other part of quantum physics that they finally have all come to, is that even the atom is a set of waves and frequency. It is not something solid. You cannot take a picture of something and say that's it, because that's the instance that it was and is no more. Okay. So if everything is a frequency, and then the expression of frequencies is wave, then a wave takes time and space to wave in. Otherwise, it couldn't wave. So the whole idea when people go, well, space and time, it's or time is I mean, just the simple thing of, again, that's one of the reasons I asked you. We talked about the definition.
Okay, how about this? Wait, before we move on,
Yeah.
That's an excellent point there, Professor. How can it wave if there's no medium to wave in? Well, I think when we talk about sound and vibration and frequency and particles, to us, that's us here in the 3D, 4D context of time and space as we know it. But we can also say perhaps that time and space don't exist and still waving exists, because there's different types of waves other than just the waves that you and I are familiar with in 3D time and space.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And when you said earlier, we are all from the source and we were returned to the source. My definition is everything is consciousness. Everything comes from consciousness. So that is the source from my perspective. And the habits and nature of consciousness is what we really need, going back to the whole topic of education and the subjects like we were talking about with Heidi earlier. If everything is consciousness, it's this first principle of the Hermetic principles is mentalism. Everything is mental, right? It all comes from mind. So the mind is what consciousness is, and it has habits and natures. And it's one of its characteristics is that it expresses energy. It expresses motion. It is constantly in motion. And I think that one of the characteristics of that motion, and this goes back to what you were saying, Brian, about we're here to learn and to experience and all that. I think that comes from the inherent basic nature of consciousness in its motion. It's always looking, it's always creating, it's always looking for novelty. It's always and this goes to the other subject that people get wound up about free will. You have free will or you don't have free will. It's like, well, the fact that I'm making my own predictive movements, thoughts, changes, ideas, concepts, every interaction with whatever it is I'm interacting with, that's my free will. It's not a program, because I can divert it any second and go in a different direction. So that
let me jump in there. Let me jump in there. You got free will, but then you might also have soul contracts.
Let me go to that. So let me go to that. So the expression of consciousness expresses motion and movement and creativity and novelty. And that's expressed through its.
Makes me wonder, how do we get to this subject?
I wanted
it's all education.
It's wonderful, though. I mean, listen, we do cover a lot of subjects in this show.
Well, there's Robert time traveling back to two or three shows ago.
Well, listen, I have a time machine. I have a time machine, and I live in when I get in it, I live in the moment. It's called a motor car. I sit in it. I'm in the moment. I look through the windscreen. I see the future.
Right.
I look in the reading vision mirror. I see me past.
And see, and that's one of the attributes, in my opinion, of this idea of consciousness constantly in motion and always creating and seeking novelty, is that that's its nature and its habit. So in order for that to happen, the will and the intent and the freedom to do that are other characteristics of this consciousness. Now, to your point about the soul contracts. So to me, consciousness creates universe, creates everything. Its habit and nature is energy. The habit and nature of energy is frequencies. We only know and continually find new realms of frequency spectrum that we didn't know exist. And we have developed amazing tools and techniques and toys to gather telemetry that we didn't know was there, had no idea, but we all depend on it now in various forms. Well, that frequency expression of energy is the expression of consciousness. And one of the habits of creation of consciousness is to create individual frequency stamps of consciousness, which is what we are. We are connected to source because source, we are there because of source, but we are our unique frequency stamp signature of energy that is allowed, that is given the opportunity to be a part of consciousness and those habits and natures of motion, creation, novelty, ergo free will. So as all of these individual frequency stamps have just pop out through all the civilizations and things we know, and that's the other thing about time. It's like, well, wait a minute, how come there's all this old shit if time doesn't exist? You know,
Well, how about this? How about this? It's not to say that we can't perceive linear time and it doesn't exist in a way, but then you can also say in another way time doesn't exist. So there's this malleable nature, just like it is or it isn't, and it's kind of a bit of both. That's a quantum entanglement. You spoke to how music can bring you back to like the 80s when you're rocking it out on a jet ski, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's a nature of quantum entanglement where your consciousness, and I'd argue maybe, or some argue that above consciousness or the base of that is soul or spirit, and then consciousness comes off of that, and then the physical world comes off of that. But
I think consciousness creates that frequency stamp, is the soul, is the spirit. It is the unique energy set that makes the uniqueness of our individuality. So
we are super intertwined, where it's like you got like a light photon where it's got this component and this component. So you got like a consciousness and a soul component kind of moving together like that.
Because it seems that all souls have this thing called consciousness. It seems like all species have this thing called consciousness. It seems like whether it's the ethereum or the materium, the seen or the unseen, the physical, the metaphysical, there's these constant characteristics of what we perceive as consciousness, which is our ability to have sentience, be self-aware, have our perspective and our individual speculation, because that's why it's not, I don't know if it's why we're here, that I can't say that, but I can say that that is a common characteristic among all the carbon-based meat suits that I've engaged with, and the ones that are ethereal in the spirit realm that don't have a material body.
What's your hype on this, Heidi?
I know. I'm like, I'm drooling, listening. I'm like, wow.
I know. It's
I'm IRL right now. Oh, I love it.
We always seem to get into vibrations and
that's what's all about.
We do.
Yeah,
I mean, that's good because everything.
I talk about it with the kids. That's the thing. Especially when you all were talking about. I think the easiest concept for the younger ones, they get frequency. They get it. Am I feeling really good and like feeling the high vibes, or am I feeling low vibes? And case in point, if we have a rough start in the morning or we're trying to rush out of the house and we start snapping, it's like, whoa, we're literally changing the frequency in the house. We have to bring it back down. We go ground ourselves. We do something, or we connect. That's
actually strange you say that, because look, last show I think I brought up a part where you walk down a hallway and people are walking towards you. If you've got a smile on your face, they automatically smile back. It's like yawning. It's contagious, But
sure.
If you've got a frown on your face, you can guarantee people they just kind of look at the floor. I didn't see you. They know you're there. Normally they say good morning to you, but they're kind of.
In traditional Chinese medicine, I was a shiatsu practitioner back in the mid 80s, and I had to learn traditional Chinese medicine. And shiatsu is acupressure. So we used, as Japanese, we used the same meridians and points. We just didn't poke. And since I could remember, I passed out when they took blood from my marriage license back in the 80s. Needles and me just are not friends. And you have to put me out to put a needle in me. So,
Which reminds me, everybody, hey, give that little fella a tickle down there. I'm talking about the thumbs up. You're talking about the thumbs up, and hit like and subscribe.
I love it when you use something that I'm talking about to push that in there. So thank you very much. I feel like you met my quota.
It reminds me, I mean.
But my point is that with the Ayurvedic, the I Ching, the traditional Chinese medicine, there's all of the Eastern and ancient medicinal systems took a completely different approach to the experience of the body. And what I was going is I was working with a doctor in Atlanta, and she had a practice that covered a whole number of different modalities. She was an naturopath and did acupuncture, everything. So I produced some CDs with her and for her that focused on what they call the Wei Qi. And the Wei Qi are the frequency bands that extend out beyond your body. We are electrical beings, which goes back to the connection with source and consciousness and the energy that manifests us. There seems to be electricity all over the place, or at least what we define as electricity. And even in science, they can't, there's no agreed definition of what electricity actually is. We just know how to create it and use it. But the idea of energy fields is something to the vibrations that you're talking about, Heidi. And Mr. B was talking about when you smile at somebody, what you're doing is you're sending a vibration, a frequency at them.
Yep.
And it's coming from you. And these Wei Qi fields, if you do Tai Chi or Qigong, you can connect with the natural energy fields of the body. And you can begin to have these fields that extend out. I've known people that have gone 50, 60 feet, and you can feel it and see the change from their focus. You can use it for protection. You can use it for healing. I mean, it's just the profundity and the simplicity of it is really amazing.
I just want to say you're going to love this. This is another circle back, but that's how we start our morning. My circle time is Qigong. We do all the elements, and I kid you not. And then and then I bring out some old school theater games, and we pass the clap, but the Qigong moves, and they're into it. They're into it. And then I get us on all fours. Do you feel the vibration from the planet? like it's coming up. I'm now bring it down.
Heidi,
they're into it. These children are into it.
You are giving the gift of life and knowledge to kids that this is the kind of information that they should be exposed to.
Well, that's what, if people are upset about what's going on in the world, I'm let's look at the kids, let's shift it. And there's our happy ending.
That's awesome.
Trying to do what I can. It wasn't helping being on set anymore. I was delivering red pills on set for so many years. They called me Craftspiracy, and that was my old world. But I kind of feel like I'm actually getting something back. And I took a major pay cut, but I'm a lot happier. I'm seeing the results.
That's wonderful.
Well, it's awesome for me to hear when I'm talking about things that are important to me, and you go, we're doing that too. Oh, we're doing that.
I want you to know.
This is going on.
And I want viewers to know, this isn't something we have to wait for. We need to plan for. It's coming. It's happening now. And being in LA, we are a target. We have nonstop energy thrown at us to take us down. But as much as there is some dark here, there is a ton of light. We're balancing it out, but we also have a lot of kids here, and we've got to guard them. We're the guardians of these kids, and we're shifting the frequency here.
And that's incredibly important for this renaissance that I'm talking about that we're going through, because I think everything is there's the cycles within cycles thing. There has been a particular pattern in energy frequencies over the last 400 years or so that have been very profitable for those who don't have our best interest in mind. And they have ridden it through several of cycles within it. But that 400-year period, you can see this in different divination tools, astrology, numerology, the I Ching. There's a number of things, even the tarot readers, and you're seeing a confluence of the same types of characteristics. And this cycle is ending. And those that have been writing it they know it's ending because they can feel their power kind of, they don't feel as good about it, and they're losing support. It's taken a lot more work, and everything they do, they are just doing with incredible ineptness. You're seeing incompetence on levels that, I mean, anybody, in my opinion, and from what I've seen, particularly this last 10 years, anybody that's in politics, they couldn't run a chicken shack or start a push mower. And that is scary because they've been given the responsibility to provide some type of administration and governance over the society and the participants in that society. And they have just screwed it up big time. Everything, as I was saying earlier, nothing can be fixed. It all has to be replaced. There's an amazing amount of incredible stuff that's been coming out, and it's going to start really dumping out in the next couple of years. In particular, two things. The most important thing is energy. If you have free energy, then you eliminate a whole bunch of stuff, and you change and empower a whole bunch of things that aren't currently. So the ability to have energy and water, both we can get endless supplies out of the ether, out of the atmosphere. Those technologies are about to get dumped, and it's going to cause a massive disruptive transformation in the world as we know it today.
I have an interesting question.
Yes.
If I may. Sorry for butting in there. Now, with what's going on in the world, between the US and Russia and US and China, but yet we still send companies over there to manufacture stuff for us. It makes me wonder. It's the politics stuff. It's just a front, just to make us all chase our tails, and it's a facade.
It's a show.
I want to jump in. I want to jump in because there's a facade of politics, but then there's a real politic behind the scenes. And right now there's definitely a titanic clash happening in reality. All these Fortune 500 companies pulling out of Russia, and then people not selling oil to each other, and the Nord Stream pipeline just getting conveniently bombed. All of that, and these knock-on effects, like what Professor's talking about, how inept these people are. Well, those knock-on effects are happening on everything, whether it's education, as Heidi's so painfully aware in doing her valiant efforts to turn the tide and very dark spot on this planet, Los Angeles. I did 7 years in LA. I went going
on 24.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I know, but, from Chicago.
It's it's a capital city for Tent City, isn't it?
Some parts, yeah.
Parts.
Well, the only thing that I have to say is on California, because I was born there, I spent my first 28 years there from the 50s through the 80s, and that's when it was paradise. It was awesome. Yeah. We drank from the water hose. There was no phones, no computers, no shit. We just had all the rock and roll and great music and all that. We didn't have the crowds. We didn't have the immigration. None of that. So I'm just want to make the point that at one time it was awesome. It breaks my heart to see what they've done to it now.
Well, there's places. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's strong. Yeah. And that's what it is. It's like the darkness, it doesn't come in as like wearing the ugly boogeyman mask right off. It's got this really beautiful, shiny, sexy, attractive,
benevolent bullshit.
So
yeah.
Do you think
so
what's actually
happening?
Do you think it's actually what's happening in politics at the moment in the US? I mean, look, I'm an outsider looking in. It boggles me. It boggles my mind what I'm seeing, what's happening in the US, and it's like Biden's in there doing his thing, and it's like, is it they're trying to kind of stir up the people that they will take a radical change? That, I mean,
So
it's staged. Do you think it's all staged?
Yes,
It's like,
yes,
Oh,
it's
yes,
staged.
Yes.
It's staged.
100%.
It is a
Biden-
show. It's a
Biden
complete
is not on
show.
Air Force One.
let's screw
Yeah.
the general public. Let's screw the general public right down to the bare knuckles, right? And we'll put up
By
a fight.
choice.
Yeah, and
How
but
about
They
this?
choose to fall for
the
it. They
savior's
choose
on
to
the
do it.
side, as they say. The savior's on the side, ready to come in like a knight in shining armor.
There is
riding his white stallion. Right?
We
So
are.
that actor is not in the wings or behind the curtains, because there is no savior that's coming in.
Exactly.
It's the energies and the people who are going
Lead
to
it.
move this thing forward into the change that needs to happen. And like the famous phrase, be the change you want to see. But the rest of the stuff that you're talking about, be at least in my perspective, and this is global, this ain't just the US. This is all a show. We've basically got at least 2 or 3 movies on one screen. And they're carefully crafted and curated to capture the craniums of the clueless. How many C's was that?
Well said.
but that is, I tried to make that as simple as possible. But the idea is that it is a show, and it's designed to captivate and to cause all of the consternation and chaos that's going on purpose, because the more confusion and chaos occurs, then the more division and frustration and conflict occurs. And that is purely by design. And it goes back to what I was saying about my 400-year cycle. These folks that are doing this shit, whether they are conscious, and there are some, there's no doubt, this whole concept of energy and frequencies and cycles within cycles is not limited to those of us who have gone around, poked into that information, and learned about it. This is stuff that is of the highest order in the minds of those who are trying to exercise their control over everything. They understand this, but they don't know how to deal with it. They just know that the main thing is the energy they've been riding is waning. It's dissipating. They are running out of gas, essentially, and there's nothing they can do about it. So one of the expressions as a result of that, coupled with the ineptness and the incompetence of just being able to do something and go through it and to completion, is that they've gotten to the point where they know that there's nothing else they can do. They don't think ahead in plan B or C. They do plan A, they go at it, and one of the biggest problems with emotions is having a concept of being goal oriented without a system or a process to achieve the goal. So when you have an ideology that is designed to have constant confusion and chaos about your identity and all the different forms, your gender, your race, your status, your class, your skills, all the different things that define our identity, they've shoved as much confusion into that as possible to create that chaos of confusion, which naturally results in conflict, because people don't even know why they're having a conflict a lot of the times, or the ideas and things that they are emotionally about have not been vetted in their own minds, because they have been told what to think instead of how to think. So now you have this puppeteer show, strings are all wearing out, shit's starting to break off, they can't do it anymore. In the process, the ones that the sheeple and sleeple that they've tried to contain through control are starting to have just, going back to the consciousness thing, if you resonate with something, you experience that. If you don't resonate with something, you experience that. Well, when you start seeing a whole bunch of crap and shit piled up all around you and constant mayhem and chaos, and you go, I used to think that was okay, or I didn't even think about it because I wasn't paying attention to it. But there's so much of it out there now that I'm having a hard time not paying attention to it. And the more I pay attention to it, I start going, wait a minute, I'm not resonating with this. There's something that is wrong. I need to ask questions. I need to find out more information about this, because going back to the language thing, the word I was given for what I'm seeing does not apply to the way I'm feeling or the experience I'm having. So I have to go investigate that word at least. And what is the definition behind it? What have they done to my words? I mean, I've called everybody sweetheart since the 60s, because that's, my parents were from Oklahoma and Kansas. I was raised Midwest cornbread fed. And those were the, accountability, responsibility. You get off your ass, you're on your own, go make it happen. And that's the way that I was raised. So when I see and in all of these people now that didn't have that benefit, that have adopted information and all these character types and all this curriculum and all of this crap that has been designed to cause confusion, they're starting to go, I need to have another look. So I think what we're seeing as a part of this renaissance is what I'm calling the rise of the pissed off peeps. And it is a growing, natural, organic thing, because regardless of if you've taken a dive into any of the deep subjects and tried to see what history really is, which is not what we've been told, what science really is, but not what we've been told, what health really is, but not what we've been told, all of these important knowledge domains are going to get a complete makeover. And it's going to come from the people that are looking at it going, the stuff I've been seeing has got some problems. I need to go have a look for myself. They look, they get educated, they connect with other people of like minds and start sharing information like we're doing here. And all of a sudden, you're getting an awakening on its own, an organic awakening. And what I also call the great rethink, because I think what's happening is everybody's having a chance to stop and rethink. I mean, one of the offshoots of the pandemic and the lockdown crap was that everybody had a chance to go contemplate their navel. And then not a lot of people took advantage of it and made the most out of it, but some people did, and a lot of people did. And I think we're seeing that. I think there's an awakening. I keep hearing about the Great Awakening and things going on. Well, the cycles and the energies from my studies indicate that would be happening on its own. And the information that I'm seeing with what's going on in the reality, and as I interact with it, and I glean the data feeds and go, wow, what the hell's that over there? What's this? It seems to be leading towards this transformation. It's going to be very disruptive, but it's going to be incredibly positive on the other side.
I agree. I think I have to leave soon, so I just want to jump in for a little bit here. I'm getting called away now, but it's I'm a prepper survivalist guy. In addition to being a volunteer with a Full Disclosure Now movement, right? So that the people know the truth about everything from free energy to certain islands where politicians are more concerned about minors, right? As the song goes. And the thing is that from now, 2023, 2024 to 2030, I kind of see as being, and others see as being, kind of a rough ride, if you will. But kind of like, if you could make it through that and raise your frequency and organize with others and try to strengthen yourself and your communities about you, and you make it to 2030, woohoo! Here we are to build our Star Trek future. That's kind of about the timeline that I've got projected down.
Well, I don't believe we're going to get disclosure. I think they're going to keep playing this ball game for many more years to come.
Well, not disclosure from the top down. It's disclosure from the bottom up.
Yeah, but yes. I mean, there's stuff they're going to say is classified, and they're not going to talk about that stuff. They're not going to let people.
But that's the thing is, the people at the top, they can talk about classified this and classified that all they want. But there's going to come a time when people are going to be coming out with like UFO parts, or like a body, a very respectable body of an alien, or
we're hearing that talk. We're hearing that talk all the time, but nothing's happening.
Well,
because
we're in
all the testimonials get shot down. All the testimonials get shot. We need this. Yes. We need those that have testimonies. The real people, they're getting shot down and they're getting suppressed because of all this. Like, it's still a war. It's full-time war right now. And shields up.
I'm going to throw a linguistic nugget on the table here about this. Disclosure The real disclosure happened a millennia ago. The disclosure is really about the way that it's been positioned and people have been thinking about it is, are we alone? Well, that's been answered millions of years, at least hundreds of thousands of years ago. And
So many
at
people
a
want
minimum,
confirmation. That's all it is.
at a
They want
minimum,
confirmation.
at least 20 or 30 decades ago, or millennia ago. So that is part of the control that they're using for this definition of this word disclosure. I've got some, I need to send you some pictures I've got that are very similar to that, Brian. That's awesome.
Wow.
But the disclosure that's really the big issue now is the fact that all of the technology that was gained from whatever has been captured or found over the last 7 or 8 decades has been hidden. And it would have completely transformed the society and the world that we have today had it not been sequestered and kept in the hands of the few. That disclosure, I think, is what's really going on, or what's about to happen. And that also is going to be a contributor to this great unwashed mass of the pissed off peeps as they rise. Because when people find out that, hey, what do you mean? Wait, we didn't need all this infrastructure and all this intermediators and institutions and shit to be able to have energy.
It's all this BS that's going. It's all BS. It really is. I mean,
let me give you an example of false narratives real quick and timelines. Tartaria. I really suspect that a lot of this time travel shenanigans occurred for these guys to go back and erase things like Tartaria from the map and from history as we know it. And at the same time, there comes a point where so many people are starting to find out about ETs or Tartaria, the truth about our governments and secret societies, that you need way too much time travel for them to try to erase all of that from the consciousness and the timeline. Good luck. So I think that's where 2030, like if you talk about Project Looking Glass and all that, it seems like the bad guys kind of gave up because they saw a timeline where no matter what, no matter how many shenanigans they do, by 2030 they lose and we, the people, quote unquote, win. So, but on that note, I want to run and thank you for hosting me here with the rest of our fine compatriots.
It's always a pleasure to have you here, Brian.
ID, Professor Terrence, Aussie Sue, and crew.
Brian, great to see you again. And do those threads justice,
Thanks,
man.
Keep
your on.
Oh yeah. Cheers. God bless everybody. Thank you.
See you
Happy
later.
Saturday.
Bye now. Well, then that's wonderful. It's the thing that gets to me is they've got this tech. We know they've got technologies. We do know that. And but the thing is, they keep bringing up, and I keep bringing this up. They talk about global warming. They're worried about this and they're worried about that. Now, if they were really worried about it, they would be doing something about it. Unfortunately, the only thing they're talking about is this carbon tax. So we know what road they're going down. Now, when they talk about global warming, which I've mentioned many times before, they talk about the ice sheets on the west coast of Antarctica breaking away, melting. Now, by all means, anybody out there can just Google it and ask how many active volcanoes underneath that. There are about 9 active. There are 9 active volcanoes, but there's actually 3. Actually, there are 9 volcanoes, 3 active at the moment under that ice sheet, exploding, letting out magma, you name it. I mean, of course, people say, "Oh, you know what fire and ice is like? It'll suddenly freeze up again." Not with a sudden explosion, like volcanoes erupt. They're going to break things. It's going to cause a lot of damage, and of course, the warm water it creates is going to melt it and it's going to break off the ice sheet. But they don't want to talk about that. You don't hear about these active volcanoes. They're not going to tell you about it. Then they talk about, but what about the glaciers, the melting? Well, how do the glaciers look like? They look like frozen waterfalls. Why do they look like? Because they move and they go through what they call a 40-year cycle of thaw and a 40-year cycle of freeze. And it's constantly evolving, constantly moving. And people don't understand this. They really do not understand that there is a cycle to everything. Now, science that turn around, if you listen to what the scientists say, we are heading out of an ice age. We're still coming out of an ice age. The planet itself goes through a cycle. So, but what? So what's the global warming? 0.04, right? Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is nothing. If you quadruple it, it's still nothing. But then they, as I was talking to Gerald earlier on, they talk about, first the ozone layer. I mean, they banned CRCs gases because of the ozone layer.
CFCs,
Yes. But did they talk about the 2,200 nuclear thermal bombs actually detonated in the atmosphere, especially the hydrogen bombs? No, they didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
Did they talk about that in 1970 when they done an international ban on nuclear blasts, I think, on a global sense, right? That the planet was 2 degrees warmer in 1970. You can Google all this stuff. It was 2 degrees warmer than what it is today. But yet
that's just one of the big tools in the box that they've got to beat people over the head with. It when you look at, and again, it's the terminology. They started with the global warming. The telemetry, you said, well, we're not getting the warming. Okay, well, let's change it to climate change. So, climate changes. And you can get into all of the weeds and all of the different, apparently, at least the last study I saw, the IPCC, which is out of the UN, does all the governing stuff and was the official voice of climate change. They use less than 8% of the available data in their models. The models, the math, and the machines. They're all flawed, and they're flawed, half of them on purpose and the other half on ignorance. The simplest thing because when I first heard the global warming back in the 90s, I was like, oh, I'm getting on that. We don't want any of that shit because, I've traveled the world a little bit and I've seen stuff. And so then I started digging into it. I started doing my own research, and I'm looking at it and then watching the data as it continually unfolds, because that's a wonderful thing about time and data is the more evidence that you have to help tweak your model and your math and whatever components go into your formula to try to figure out what the hell you're looking at. But the easiest thing is this: the Earth has only had an ice covering in the last 500,000 years based on the science that's used to do the climate modeling. Before that, it was a much warmer place with no ice. So ice is a relatively new in our 4 billion, whatever the number they've got right now. Ice is 500,000 of that 4 billion and it's only the last part of Earth of our time where there's ice. We are going into a colder period of the planet by nature. There's nothing we can do about it. And, it's interesting how people get on the idea of the CO2 component and don't realize that we exhale CO2. So any attempt to try to mitigate or manage the CO2 includes all the humans.
And what do trees live on? What do trees live on? CO2, carbon dioxide. Trees live on, grass lives on, everything lives on it. It's
required for life, right?
Exactly right.
I was going to say, when I checked out of this entire manufactured narrative, I worked an Al Gore telethon for climate change, or for the war on. And it was a huge event here in LA, star-studded, Moby, what's his name, Science Guy, everything. It was a vegan set, which I was hired for because I worked with a lot of vegan directors. I do all the things, but everything was biodegradable and like all this great stuff. But the entire set build was under Argyle skies, yellow haze, everyone's coughing, no one wanted to talk about it. This my assistant, poor little thing, she's like, can you not do that thing you do at this job, please? Like, wait till we get a paycheck. Because I was going to tell everybody what's up. But the kicker was, we were in, the white wedding kind of tents, the production tent, and I was crafty and I took care of all the talent and the crew and everybody. But we had one little flimsy little plastic wall between me and the segment producers, and they were doing their production meeting. I heard segment by segment what was going to happen for the big live telethon. And it was the Honduras caravan. It was everything but the weather. And not only the weather, but the crazy Argyle skies that were literally making a pattern, and yellowness, haze was all around us. No, it was all manufactured. And I was like, I'm just chopping. I'm like, I'm waiting for my paycheck. But I kind of blasted on the socials after that. But I was like, I'm done. I'm walking out. And then I tried, it was a lot.
Well, Heidi, what did you think of the people that, so you're there as the one who's awake and paying attention, and you're watching all these other people that are just ignoring it. What do you attribute that to?
Well, cognitive dissonance. I mean, they're you know what it is? It's da 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 da. It was all show. Everything was show. I was the show. I had the fancy food and look at this fancy little bamboo fork. Ooh, it was like, look at the sky. Look at your cough. Like it was all bells and whistles. And what kept me sane is I had already started hosting gatherings out here in LA, and we had all conscious gatherings. We had guest speakers and everything. So I was able to vent and find my people. But I kid you not only my team that worked for me, but the production team, everybody that was there. I usually found a couple like minds, but on this job, it was like 2, and there were like 300 of us there. So it was I was a little like, oh my gosh, like we're doomed. But I had my peeps to go to, and we grew so big, we kind of stopped doing it. But it was a big eye opener of like, this has nothing to do with our weather. This is all programming. And they made millions that weekend. Millions. And I also think twice about everybody who walked in the room. I remember chopping something, and my little Frenchie assistant, I think it was Moby, someone who walked in, I go, that's a cannibal. I'm like, just chopping. She goes, just keep working. I'm like, that's another pedo. And I'm like, she's like, I'll deal with the people. You turn around and chop. And I'm like,
I find it fascinating that these people, that are on the climate change bandwagon, they're typically of a vegan nature, and one of the big pushes is, you got to stop eating meat because all cows do is eat grass and fart. And I look at them, I go, you mean like a vegan?
and they're fake.
They do the same thing, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, these celebs, I get all their writers and everything, and half of them, they just hide in my room and eat a whole tub of beef jerky. It's all a show. It
makes you wonder how these idiots get to where they are.
Puppet masters. Well, there's a lot of stories for that.
Remember what I was saying about the way the schooling and education system was set up to take a mold and then stamp out labor assets and usable humans that they could then put into their system. That's what that is. Those people, in my opinion, people that get into those cliques, they're really cults, because it is a mind control, and it is an absolute adherence and acquiescence to whatever the hell it is they say you have to do, think, look, smell, who you can integrate with and who you can't. I mean, there's a complete control of for those people in their minds. And I think that is also that group of people are going to end up in a part of this rise of the pissed off peeps, because some of them are going to be the most extreme and expressive and aggressive, because they're going to have that, holy shit, I was way over here, and now I realize I was way over in the wrong place. You got a bunch of people in the middle, they're not even paying attention. There's no, wait a minute, what's this? Oh, okay. But the people that have been horse-waggled and tied up into this ideological groupthink bubble, those people are going to get pissed, and they're going to explode all over the place, start, just getting really out of control. And those are the ones I'm most concerned about.
And I think that's the rough ride Brian was talking about, because it's certainly happening out here. One of the most, Glendale, very affluent neighborhood. They're they were on the news. Well, they weren't even on the news. I don't know if it made the news, but they were revolting against the school system. They're like, get this out of our curriculum. Like, they're rising up. People that I never would have dreamt of. I do get a random DM here and there from a crew member that's like, this is all the stuff you used to talk about, right? like you were onto something, Crafty. And I'm like, yeah, you want to talk ETs next? Like what do you want to do? But they're all like, it's an uprising. I feel it out here. So like, I live in LA, but I'm not of it. I'm kind of on the outskirts and very grounded, but I can't go in. The frequency is so different in West Hollywood and LA now. And
Plastic.
Pardon? It's
Plastic.
Yeah. And just, it's literally, you feel it. Your skin goes, and your heart goes, and you're like, and then, I was going to circle back the weapons and the tech. I've been teaching my kids. I haven't brought it into the center yet, but my kids, 1 year Santa brought all Fairway blankets and blue blockers and tabs for everything. It was like, I'm like, wow, it's 2020. Santa knew we needed a healing Christmas. Look at that. That's so cool. We still use them. So they know that once in a while our C1, C2 get knocked out. We're like, was that a pulse? They hit us once in a while and we have to recover. That's our war. So we have to have shields up. We got to vibe so high and dodge and weave. And if we get hit, we detox, we manage it, we recognize it. Like, that's the war. This is going to go on for a little bit, I think. But as we already know that, we can way show to others, especially teach the young ones how to navigate, and we'll get out of it, because there's a lot, the tipping point happened. It's a lot different than when I did that telethon. There's a lot more people now going, something's not right. That was a tangent.
So yeah,
We
but
got tangents now.
you're,
That's good.
you're
That's
seeing
good.
precisely or exactly what I'm describing. Is there is, I think we're going to see a lot more of it, and this is going to put an additional burden on those of us who are already further down the road on these subjects and the understanding and knowledge that we're talking about, that they are just now coming to awakening to. So we're going to end up having to help these people. We can't just let them go off on their own, because they'll crash into something, and possibly even ourselves. So at a minimum, you have to have your head on a swivel and pay attention for any incoming that you may not be planning on. But there will be incoming, particularly with family and friends and people that, this whole, both the political and the medical institutions have just been completely trashed over the last 5 years, and in a big way. And those are two areas that people hold very emotional and strong feelings about. And that has caused an amazing amount of division, simply because of the inability to have enough respect for one another, to have their own ideas, and not push an emotional demonization on them because they don't think like you. And that is another one of those, they taught them what to think in that case, not how to think. So I've been told to think that this is the right way, and this whole climate change is the right thing. Trust the science. Like, no, it's not. There's a lot of information that if you knew about, you might not have that opinion. You might not have that viewpoint. And I was just trying to find, I've got this great picture. You guys, everybody's probably seen Iron Man, right? And he's always out there on a stage with lights behind him, and he's got his arms out at this Stark Expo and all that. There's a great picture of him doing that, and above it is me walking into family events after my conspiracy theories come true.
Yeah.
It's like, yep, I told you. And I think, there's a lot of us that are experiencing that. And so we have to, my point is that there's going to be a lot of people that are not going to handle this change real well. This knowledge apocalypse is what I called it on my shows. It's the end of the curated narrative. That this information is going to flip some minds into ways that they never knew existed, let alone are prepared for. So that's going to cause some extreme reactions and freakouts that we're going to have to help them with. We're going to have to make sure that we're at least watching out for them because they might bump into you and you may not want that. But for the ones that you want to help and shepherd that actually look for additional help, that are asking for you to help, we got to give it to them. We got to help them through this so that we can all get through this next phase together.
Well, my friends, we have reached that 2-hour mark, and it's been absolutely wonderful. And Heidi, hope you come again with us and join us anytime. I'll always send you, if I see you there saying hello, I'll send you a link. You're more than welcome to join us anytime and join the team. And
Thank you so much for letting me play with you big boys too. That was fun. Thank you. I'm on this side
Heidi,
now.
it was a real pleasure, Heidi. Thank you very much.
You.
and
And silent but deadly over there. I see you.
And it's nice to have a lady on board. I mean, it puts a tame these.
I didn't
boys to bed.
swear.
No, they didn't either. Isn't that wonderful? I think I
know.
swore more than. Wow. See what happens when there's a lady around, eh? And Gerald, thank you very much for joining us, mate. And look, mate, maybe next time we'll pick one of your subjects. Now,
I could have talked about any of these subjects you guys talked about, but I was just fascinated what all you guys were saying. There really wasn't much more to add other than I could have talked about frequency, could have talked about portals, could have talked about soul travel or soul family. I mean,
yeah.
me and Jane's into all these subjects, but I was just like
But
listening to everything you guys were saying.
Unfortunately, when Robert and Brian get together, and it's even worse when you got Jim Goodall on with us. I mean, I'm going.
I was just happy to pull up space on your screen, I guess.
Yeah, but look, listen, it's always a pleasure being with you guys. It really is, and it's nice to have a new addition to the family here. Yeah, how about that, Heidi? Anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining us.
That was a treat. Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And Robert,
Sir.
Professor
Okay.
Bauer,
I'll take.
thank you very much.
Oh, do I log out then? Yeah.
Well, you can do whatever you want. You can hang
He
on.
kicks
you can
us
hang
out
on.
all
Is this
just
what I
whenever he decides. Yeah.
You can hang on.
Oh, he
can hang
does
on
it.
if you want.
Okay. Okay.
No, okay. We'll just kind of just put yourself off the screen there. Just blank yourself out, and we'll come back in about 5 minutes. But I just do the closing. So,
Okay.
as I always say, thank you, everybody. Be nice, be kind, and most of all, aspire to inspire one another, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Is to help lift each other, and let's all rise up together. I tell you, you've got to love life, mate, and love each other. Be kind. Have a good one, guys. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.